The council chamber of the alien coalition glittered with crystalline walls and humming energy conduits, a cathedral of superiority where emissaries from half a dozen species gathered. Their voices overlapped in tones of disdain as a projection of the human fleet hung in the center, massive, angular warships scarred by rust, their hulls bearing designs centuries out of fashion. The aliens laughed, their amusement rolling like thunder through the chamber. To them, humanity's so-called defense force was a joke, a museum exhibit dragged into a war it could not possibly endure. On the far side of the stars, Captain Marcus Hale stood silent on the observation deck of the dreadnought Iron Revenant. The ship's vast hull lay dormant, anchored above a fractured moon, but its very presence whispered of battles long forgotten. Hale's weathered face carried the weight of a man who had seen too many defeats. His eyes, gray like old steel, fixed on the Relic Fleet drifting in quiet formation. He knew what others thought: rust, weakness, irrelevance. And yet, deep inside, he felt a pulse of defiance that would not die. Beside him, Commander Elias Ward reviewed tactical schematics on a dim holographic table. Where Hale was forged by years of conflict, Ward was precise, a man of logic sharpened into steel. His voice, low and steady, carried none of the contempt the aliens had voiced, but something more dangerous: calculation. "They think we are finished," Ward said, his gaze never leaving the projection of alien fleet strength. "They think age is weakness. But they've never faced ships like ours in the way we will fight them." Hale grunted, his scarred jaw tightening. "They mock because they've forgotten what steel and fire can do. They've grown too comfortable behind their shields. They've forgotten hunger." A sharp hiss of hydraulics signaled the arrival of Lieutenant Adrian Cole. The young pilot's steps echoed across the deck, quick with both eagerness and unease. Barely past 25, Cole carried himself with the restless energy of someone untested, desperate for battle but haunted by the fear of failing his commander's expectations. He saluted crisply. "Sir, the crews are assembled. They've seen the broadcasts from the coalition. Morale isn't high." Hale studied the young man for a long moment. Cole's uniform was immaculate, but beneath the surface was the trembling heart of every soldier who had ever marched to war uncertain of survival. "Good," Hale said at last, his tone gravel rough. "Let them hear the laughter. It will burn hotter than any fuel when the time comes." Ward glanced up, his expression faintly approving. "Adversity sharpens men, Lieutenant. If the crew is uneasy, it means they understand the cost. Confidence, without reason, is poison." Cole hesitated, his lips parting as if to protest, then closed again. His eyes, however, betrayed his longing. He wanted glory, but he feared that piloting one of these relic starfighters, slower, heavier, obsolete, would never give him the chance. Hale noticed. The captain always noticed. He placed a heavy hand on Cole's shoulder, the weight of it grounding. "This fleet may look like scrap to them, but every plate of steel, every cannon, every scar tells a story. When the time comes, you'll write yours." The young man's throat bobbed, and for a moment, determination replaced doubt in his gaze. Beyond the observation deck, the fleet hung in silence. Cruisers, carriers, battleships, hulls pitted with rust, some marked with the names of cities long fallen. They were reminders of humanity's long decline, a decline the coalition had exploited. But Hale saw something else: tools forged in a harsher era, relics with teeth sharper than the galaxy remembered. Ward broke the silence with a murmur. "The Council of Species has formally declared war. Their fleets will move within weeks." His fingers danced across the hologram, expanding the alien formation. Sleek ships armed with energy lances, shimmering shields, and propulsion drives that made human engines look like stone wheels beside racing fire. "They expect to crush us in days." Cole's voice cracked with a mixture of fear and outrage. "Then what chance do we have?" Hale's gaze never left the Relic Fleet. His silence stretched, heavy as iron, until at last he spoke. "We are human. Our chance is the only one that has ever mattered. Fight, or be erased." The words settled over them like a vow. Cole straightened, his fists clenched. Ward closed the hologram with a flick, his eyes narrowing as though sharpening blades in his mind. In the dark beyond the stars, the alien coalition laughed. But aboard the Iron Revenant, the silence that followed was not despair. It was the quiet before something ancient stirred, something the galaxy had long forgotten. The Relic Fleet drifted still, but within its engines and its crew, the ember of defiance began to glow. The storm had not yet broken, but Marcus Hale knew one truth with absolute certainty. When it did, the galaxy would hear humanity roar. You said. The hangars beneath the fractured moon smelled of oil and dust, the scent of forgotten wars clinging to every rivet and beam. Captain Marcus Hale walked slowly through the cavernous space, his boots ringing against metal that had not felt purpose in decades. Around him loomed the skeletal hulks of human warships, their armor plates layered thick with age, their gun ports sealed by grime. To most, they looked like corpses waiting to be scrapped, but to Hale they were sleeping titans, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Commander Elias Ward followed at his side, his gaze sweeping over the relics with an expression closer to calculation than reverence. His mind did not dwell on sentiment. It measured ranges, angles, and opportunities. They built these ships in an age when survival was measured in steel, not shield harmonics, he murmured, tracing the outline of a turret with his eyes. The Coalition doesn't understand what they're about to face. They've never been bloodied by weapons meant to punch through flesh and bone, not just flicker against energy barriers. Hale's lips curved into something almost like a smile. Then they'll learn, one way or another. The clang of hurried steps echoed behind them, and Lieutenant Adrian Cole emerged, a smear of grease across his cheek. His youthful face carried the wild gleam of a man who had just touched a legend. "Sir," he said breathlessly, "the engineers brought the reactor on Vigilant Dawn online." She roared like she'd never been silent. You could feel it in your bones. Hale studied the lieutenant with a steady gaze. Cole's excitement reminded him of a younger self, before years of battle had ground exhilaration into hard resolve. Good. The crews need to see life in these ships. Hope rides easier on sound than silence. Cole nodded quickly, but his expression faltered as he glanced around the hangar. Some of the men say we're walking to our graves. That these ships won't hold against the firepower of a coalition cruiser. Ward's tone was like ice. They're right to be afraid. Fear is the only compass that keeps a man alive. Let it guide them, but not master them. Hale let the silence linger. The air thrummed faintly, as if the dormant ships themselves were listening. Then he spoke, his voice deep and deliberate. Our ancestors built these vessels when humanity had nothing but hunger and the will to carve out space. They built them heavy, slow, and ugly, but unyielding. Do not measure them by appearances, Lieutenant. Measure them by the spirit of those who forged them. Cole swallowed, a spark of steadiness replacing doubt in his eyes. Yes, sir. The days that followed were a blur of revival. Hangars once cloaked in silence rang with the pounding of hammers and the hiss of welding torches. Crews worked around the clock, dragging power conduits, tearing away corroded panels and reawakening engines that had slumbered for generations. Each ignition shook the decks, sending shivers of defiance through the men who heard it. Ward oversaw training drills with relentless precision. Holograms of alien fleet formations filled the command decks as he drilled his officers in the art of ambush and attrition. We cannot match them in speed, he reminded them, his voice unwavering. We cannot match them in numbers. What we can do is strike where they do not expect, endure what they cannot imagine, and bleed them until their arrogance rots into fear. Cole trained in the cockpit of his assigned starfighter, the Hawk 7, a relic whose angular wings bore scars of battles fought long before his birth. At first, the machine felt sluggish, its controls heavy as stone, but he learned quickly that it could survive punishment no alien craft would dare take. He drove it through simulated battles until sweat ran down his face, practicing brutal maneuvers, controlled rams, sudden dives into debris fields, weapons fired at ranges close enough to scorch paint. His body ached, but with every drill, the ship seemed to grow more alive beneath his hands, a partner instead of a burden. One night, Hale gathered the crews in the cavernous bay where half the fleet now hummed with light. His presence drew silence, a sea of weary faces turning toward him. He stood tall, shoulders squared, and his voice carried the weight of steel. They call our ships relics. They call us weak, broken, forgotten. But hear me now. Steel bends, but it does not break. These ships are not relics. They are reminders. Proof that humanity has never surrendered to time, nor to those who think themselves our betters. The men listened, their eyes burning as though his words had struck flint to stone. Hale raised his voice, his tone thundering through the bay. When the coalition comes, they will not find a graveyard. They will find a people who refuse to kneel. And when our cannons speak, the galaxy will remember that humanity does not fade quietly. We roar. The crews erupted, their voices rising in a chorus that filled the hangar, shaking the walls with defiance. Even Cole, standing among them, felt his chest swell until doubt had no room left inside him. Later, when the noise had faded and the men returned to their duties, Ward stood beside Hale at the edge of the hangar, watching the ancient ships hum with life. "You've lit a fire," Ward said softly. Hale's expression was grim, but there was pride in his eyes. "Now let's see if it burns hot enough to withstand the storm." Above them, the Relic Fleet awakened one ship at a time. Engines glowed, reactors hummed, and gun batteries groaned as if stretching after a long sleep. The sound of power rolling through the vessels echoed across the void, a deep vibration that carried through metal and bone alike. The alien coalition was moving, preparing to descend with the arrogance of those who believed victory already assured. But as the Relic Fleet roared back to life, a single truth grew clear to every man aboard those warships. The galaxy had forgotten humanity's strength, and soon it would remember. "You said." The void of space stretched black and endless, broken only by the shimmering gleam of the alien armada advancing in perfect formation. Their ships moved with cold elegance, silver hulls wreathed in energy shields that pulsed with arrogance, every line of their design a declaration of superiority. Over open channels, alien voices carried taunts, mocking laughter that rippled like static across the human fleet's comms. They spoke of graveyards, of rust, of humanity's last gasp. The words reached every ear, but aboard the Iron Revenant, silence answered them. Captain Marcus Hale stood on the command deck, his figure rigid against the glow of tactical displays. His eyes, gray as winter stone, studied the alien formation without blinking. The laughter was nothing to him now. He had heard it before in the sneers of enemies who thought humanity broken. He knew what would come when steel and fire spoke louder than words. Commander Elias Ward worked the holographic table beside him, his fingers flicking through streams of data. Calm, precise, his voice carried no tremor. "They believe our formation is defensive. They will press straight through, expecting collapse. If we feign retreat toward the debris field, we can bait their vanguard into overextending. Their shields won't withstand close-range railgun fire." Hale nodded once. "Then we show them how relics fight." Far below, in the starfighter bay, Lieutenant Adrian Cole strapped himself into the cockpit of the Hawk 7. His palms were slick, but his breathing came steady, trained and measured. The fighter's systems growled to life, the vibrations coursing through the frame like the heartbeat of some ancient beast. He whispered to himself, not in prayer but in promise, "You'll carry me through this. I'll make you proud." The order came. Engines flared across the Relic Fleet, ships shuddering as their reactors unleashed long-slumbering fury. The human formation surged forward with grim purpose, every vessel a defiance written in steel. The alien struck first. Lances of blue-white energy screamed across the void, hammering into human hulls with blinding brilliance. Shields that did not exist could not falter, but armor groaned, bending under the assault. One cruiser erupted in flame, torn open like paper, its death a savage reminder of what they faced. Yet the line did not break. The Relic Fleet absorbed the storm, answering with thunder of its own. Railguns fired, the soundless tremor of kinetic fury tearing across the stars. Metal slugs the size of cars hurtled at impossible velocity, slamming into alien shields. Sparks cascaded as energy barriers rippled, then shattered under the unrelenting assault. The first alien frigate cracked apart, its hull split in two, debris scattering like shrapnel across the battlefield. Ward's voice was ice, sharp and controlled. "Push them. Keep the line tight. Do not yield ground." Cole's fighter darted among the carnage, its bulkier frame straining against the maneuvers he forced upon it. Alien interceptors swarmed, sleek and swift, their beams carving trails of fire through the void. Cole weaved, armor plating shrieking as shots grazed his hull. One enemy cut too close, expecting his sluggish ship to falter. Instead, Cole rolled hard, letting the interceptor overshoot before unleashing a barrage of slugs that tore the alien vessel into fragments. "Relic enough for you?" He spat into the comms, his chest heaving. The battle thickened, fire and steel colliding in brutal symphony. Alien warships unleashed storm after storm of energy fire, but the humans pressed closer, forcing their ancient machines into knife-range combat. Missiles detonated in brilliant bursts, painting the void in fire. Torpedoes tipped with nuclear cores roared outward, their detonations shaking even the largest alien cruisers, their shields buckling under the primal violence. On the Iron Revenant, Hale gave the order without hesitation. "Supercannon, prepare to fire." The crew moved as one, their faces set in grim determination. Deep within the dreadnought, the ancient mass driver began to awaken. Coils the size of towers thrummed with power, the hum building into a roar that reverberated through the hull. The weapon was crude by modern standards, a relic among relics, but its destructive power was unrivaled. Ward's gaze remained fixed on the flagship of the alien fleet, a vast command vessel bristling with weapons. "Target locked," he said softly. Hale's voice cut through the command deck like a blade. "Fire." The ship shook as the mass driver unleashed its fury. A slug of dense metal, accelerated to velocities beyond reason, tore across the void faster than the eye could follow. The alien flagship's shield flared bright, shrieked against the impact, then collapsed entirely. The slug did not slow. It ripped through the vessel's core, splitting the ship as though it were made of glass. A bloom of fire swallowed the remains, a sun born in silence. For the first time, the alien comms carried not laughter but screams. Their formation staggered, shock rippling through the fleet. What had been mockery turned to disbelief, disbelief to fear. Cole, panting in his cockpit, caught sight of the explosion and let out a raw laugh, exhilarated and half-mad. That's how relics roar. Ward's eyes remained on the tactical map, his mind already racing ahead. They'll regroup. Shock won't last. We need to press before they recover. Hale stood unmoving, his gaze fixed on the battlefield where wreckage drifted like the bones of giants. His voice was steady, unyielding. Then we press. Every breath we take is one more they will choke on. No retreat. No surrender. The Relic Fleet, scarred and burning but unbroken, surged forward again. The aliens had come expecting to erase humanity with laughter. Instead, they were bleeding in the void, their pride torn apart by ships they had called obsolete. The battle was not over. Hale knew it, Ward calculated it, Cole felt it in every strained muscle of his body. But a truth had been carved into the stars with steel and fire. Relics still had teeth, and the galaxy would never laugh so easily again. "You said." Wreckage drifted across the void like a graveyard of twisted steel, silent testimonies to the carnage that had unfolded. Fires still burned within fractured alien hulls, glowing embers against the cold expanse of space. Yet the battle raged on, and the Relic Fleet, though battered, carved a path through the chaos with brutal defiance. On the command deck of the Iron Revenant, Captain Marcus Hale stood firm, his posture unshaken despite the smoke curling from consoles and the groan of strained bulkheads. His eyes burned with the grim knowledge of what victory demanded. "Press them," he commanded, his voice as steady as forged iron. "Do not give them time to breathe." Commander Elias Ward's hands moved swiftly over the tactical display, eyes sharp with precision. "Their lines are breaking. Fear spreads faster than fire. If we strike here—" He marked a gap where 2 enemy cruisers faltered. "We can split their formation and isolate the heavier ships. Once scattered, they'll be vulnerable." Hale nodded once, trusting the mind beside him. Ward had never needed the comfort of praise. His reward was the opportunity to shape chaos into victory. Below, in the starfighter bay, Lieutenant Adrian Cole wrestled his fighter back into line. His armor plating was scarred, engines coughing smoke, but the Hawk 7 still answered his touch. He felt as though the ship itself had become an extension of his body, every groan and shudder of its frame syncing with his heartbeat. Alien interceptors closed around him, their sleek forms moving like predatory fish, but Cole did not flinch. He slammed the throttle forward, cutting through the pack in a maneuver reckless enough to make even his fellow pilots gasp. 2 enemy ships collided in the confusion, torn apart in an explosion that lit the battlefield. Cole emerged battered but alive, his lips curling into a grin that was equal parts triumph and defiance. On the Iron Revenant, Ward caught the maneuver on his display and allowed himself the smallest smirk. "The boy's learning." Hale's eyes flicked to the screen as well, the faintest pride glinting behind the steel. "Good. He'll need every lesson before this is done." The alien fleet reeled under the relentless assault. Their comms, once filled with mocking laughter, now crackled with frantic orders and disbelief. They had underestimated the humans, calling their warships relics, but now those same vessels bore down upon them like vengeful giants of iron and fire. Ward leaned closer to the display, his voice low and measured. "They're preparing to retreat. We can break them completely, if we strike now." Hale's gaze swept the command deck, lingering on the weary faces of his men, the bloodied but unbroken crew who had given everything. He felt the weight of their sacrifices pressing against his chest. "Do it," he said, his voice final. "Let the galaxy see what happens when humanity is mocked." The order surged through the fleet like lightning. Engines flared, cannons roared, and torpedoes streaked outward in a storm of fury. Human ships moved with savage intent, driving wedges into the alien formation, tearing apart vessels that had once seemed untouchable. The void became a furnace of light as explosions rippled across the battlefield. Cole led his squadron into the heart of the melee, his fighter's battered frame absorbing punishment that would have vaporized any alien craft. He became a figure whispered over comms, the Iron Falcon, a pilot who refused to fall, whose ship seemed as indestructible as the spirit guiding it. Every kill he scored was not merely a victory but a message. Humanity did not yield. The alien flagship attempted to rally its forces, but Ward anticipated the maneuver. "They want to anchor their line," he said coldly. "If we take them down, the rest will scatter." Hale's eyes narrowed, remembering the last time the supercannon had fired. The destruction it unleashed was etched into his mind, but now he saw the chance to finish what had begun. Charge the mass driver. Target that flagship. The dreadnought's decks trembled as ancient coils lit once more, humming with the promise of annihilation. Across the void, the alien command vessel loomed, shields flickering under sustained fire, its crew desperate to salvage dignity from disaster. Hale gave the order, and the Iron Revenant unleashed its wrath. The slug tore across space, a spear of pure fury. The flagship's shields collapsed, its hull rupturing in a cataclysm that sent shards of burning metal scattering like meteors. The explosion's light washed across the battlefield, a second sun marking the death of alien arrogance. Silence followed on the comms, then panic. The coalition's ships faltered, their formations unraveling as captains shouted contradictory orders. One by one, they broke off and fled into the depths of space, their laughter forever silenced. On the human decks, cheers erupted, raw and desperate, men pounding consoles and embracing one another in disbelief. For a moment, they had stood against the galaxy's contempt and emerged unbroken. Ward, however, did not smile. His eyes remained cold as he studied the fleeing enemy. They will return, and next time, they will not underestimate us. Hale exhaled slowly, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. Then let them come. We've reminded them that humanity does not vanish quietly. If they want to test us again, they'll learn the same lesson. In his cockpit, Cole drifted his battered fighter beside the Iron Revenant, staring at the wreckage of a battlefield that had nearly consumed him. His hands trembled, but his heart burned with pride. He had survived, not as a boy chasing glory, but as a man forged in fire. The stars stretched endless ahead, littered with both promise and threat. Humanity had won this battle, but Hale knew the war was only beginning. The galaxy would never laugh at relics again, but it would not forgive the humiliation. The captain stood tall, his voice quiet but resolute. They called us relics. Today, they learned to fear us. Tomorrow, they will remember why. And as the fleet gathered itself amid the silence of victory, the roar of humanity echoed across the stars, defiant and unyielding, promising battles yet to come. You said,